Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. And there it is. We are recording. Hey guys, I am so stoked to introduce this guest. She is so cool, so fun, a marketer, an entrepreneur, a columnist for MarTech. She's in our ecosystem, but she has a specialty which we have neglected, but not anymore. Recruiting, career, jobs. She lives in this space and she specifically helps marketers get jobs. And we're going to talk about not only jobs, but careers, talking about placing people. So if you're looking for marketers, if you're a marketing leader, you're looking for people, this is the podcast. If you're trying to get a new position, this is the podcast. So I'm excited. She is a conduit for great talent. She has a badass podcast you should also check out called The Get, which is the coolest name ever. And executive recruiter, founder of the Connective Good, Erica Seidel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Casey.
Hey, what's up?
Hello. It's good to be here, and happy happy Veterans Day.
Yeah, thank you.
They are recording this. I don't know if I told you this, but I know you're going to ask about career, like regrets and stuff. And one of the and career advice, and one of the things I kind of regret is not doing military service. So I'm always fascinated to meet military folks. So.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. We'll have to talk about it. We can get into it a little bit later on if you're interested. Yeah, totally. I think recruiting can be a bit of a wild ride itself. So we'll have to compare notes there on that. But let's start at the top here. And I know you're just chomping at the bit to tackle this thing. I'd love to ask you, actually, but first, before I ask you this question, I need to pass you something. So here it is. It's heavy for me, but I know you're strong. Okay, here you go. Can you grab that? There you go. You got it? Okay. All right. Take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Okay. There's two, because this is actually recruiting is kind of like a two-sided marketplace, right?
Yes.
There's the candidates and there's the clients. And the main one is that from a client standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, you might think that recruiting is all about kind of picking from a lot of different options and having, as I say, 11 out of 10 requirements and this kind of feeling of abundance. But the market is very different, not just now, but it's been different for a while. And it's really more of a market of scarcity. And I know that sounds obvious, but a lot of people are still recruiting as if there is a situation of candidate abundance. They're asking things like, why should we hire you? Why are you the best fit for this job? And they are looking for a lot of different, kind of requirements when they hire. And they often focus more on evaluating the talent than on selling the talent. And meanwhile, on the other side, candidates, like I'm having candidates tell me, like, Erica, you're the 10th person to call me this week. I'm only taking the call because I know you. And people are critiquing my pitch. Like, I have never seen a market like this. And I've done executive search for 11 years now. So,
Yes.
and what candidates want is often a little bit different than what a company is kind of pitching. So what candidates want these days, which matters a lot, is, good work, good culture, good team. This is all a little bit fussy, but that's, careers.
Yeah.
They want a company that values diversity. They want a company that values marketing. They don't want to travel anywhere near as much as a lot of CEOs think they will want to travel. So those are some key things. The other one I have to say, because I know you said upfront, like, help marketers find jobs.
Yeah.
On the candidate side, that is a misperception. Like, oh, okay, so I do retained executive search. That means that a company hires me and they say, go talk to 200 people or whatever, however many you have to talk to, narrow it down, give us the top ones.
Yeah.
And so that means I break up with more people than I kind of get married to. And, my job is not necessarily to help a marketer find a job. I love talking to marketers about their careers, but, the job is really to help the client make a good decision and find the right person, which is a little bit different. Sometimes candidates get pissed. They're like, "Well, you're not a therapist, you're not a career coach." It's like, well, no, I mean, I can do that for the few people that I'm in touch with for my search, and I do that tiny bit pro bono every week just because I think it's the right thing to do and to meet new folks. But that's a myth. So be careful. I guess my advice for candidates is always like, yeah, I heard this from an investor once, like, there's no casual meeting with an investor. It's almost like there's no casual meeting with a recruiter either. So if you're still working out what you wanna do and who you are, try to do as much of that before you talk to a recruiter as possible. And of course, I mean, these two kind of trends, I think they're changing a little bit now. Like, I'm definitely doing a lot more conversations with candidates who are really early stage and trying to figure themselves out and figure out their next steps because the market is so tight. And so I'd rather be engaged in the candidate early, even if they're not entirely sure they're going to make a move. Let me stop
Yeah.
there.
No, you know what? Not one, not two, but three myths in the matter of
Ooh,
like 30 seconds. I love this. And thankfully I wrote them all down. So we're absolutely going to tackle each and every one of them. But I really
okay.
like that it's almost like a bonus myth, the idea of not like, hey, I'm here to help the client find the candidate. I know there are some recruiters, or maybe they're more like job coaches, career coaches who will sometimes for pay, they'll actually go and try to place you in places. But what I really love of what you did is you're saying like, look, let's be clear. I'm here for I'm here for everyone, but at the same time, my job is to help this company or this organization or that HR person at that company. And I see this in like real estate too. You need to be clear, or like even financial, fiduciary responsibility. You have a responsibility to the company. And if you just put it out there, then people can understand that. That
Yeah.
being said, everyone, if you do happen to go and find Erica after the show and connect with her on LinkedIn and say you heard her on this podcast and you just stay following her and in her network, maybe you're closer to the search, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've found a lot of people by, like I have a newsletter and everything. And I mean, I'm very focused. I'm hyper focused on marketing. And so
Yeah.
I meet a lot of folks along the way, and, it's funny because some recruiters are they're really all about the money, and, I mean, obviously, that's a piece of it, right? This isn't
Yeah.
nonprofit, but, I don't know, for me, I'd rather do 1 or 2 fewer searches a year and invest that time in things like writing about what's going on with the marketing function and doing events to bring people together. I just
Yeah.
it's just kind of the way I roll just 'cause I like to be and I think marketing is just a function that is changing all the time, and so to be immersed in it, which is my value prop, like, I like to be able to, be connected to people who are doing
Yeah.
it every day and to learn from them, and that's fun.
But what a great point to mention that there's no casual meeting with a recruiter, right? So yeah, you're a very nice person, right? Yeah, absolutely. Your smile
I
is
don't know.
infectious. You're just a cool person. We talked before and we're talking in the podcast. All that being said, that someone heard you on the podcast, you still got to bring your A game, right? They have to respect the recruiters they're talking to and understand that it's a selection process. So yes, yes, it's not a place of scarcity, but there's still a selection process. So you got to be on top of your game, got to be prepared, got to just come at it with, do they need prepared answers? Or what's the best way to show up for a recruiter before we go on to the next myth? I just want to pick your brain. You say, hey,
Yeah.
there's no casual meeting. So any recommendations for the best meeting with a recruiter?
Having a clear sense of your value proposition and what you are looking for. So, often and knowing kind of, how the other side views a search. So often in my searches, I do a lot of like B2B searches, not only B2B, but B2B or B2C, but scale up kind of things where it's a company, they're like 10 million, we want to get to 50 million, or they're 50 million, they want to get to 200 million. And they want the person who has done that before, who has done that kind of scrappy to scale arc,
Yeah.
that journey. And so it's great when a candidate can say, I joined a company when it was, 20 people and I was, employee number 21 and I was with it as it scaled all the way up to 100 people and X million in revenue. Um, because that kind of shows the business impact that they have, helped to foment, and the scale that they've seen. So that's cool. That's a big piece of it, having the from to story, having a clear sense of kind of who they are. Like I had a candidate who once said, "I'm a CMO who thinks like a CFO." Wonderful. Okay. I mean, that, even having something very encapsulated, so like a little bit of, what do you call it? A tagline, I guess. It's like marketing yourself. Marketers tend to be terrible at marketing themselves.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
mean, I'm like,
Oh,
I feel
yes.
that pain myself. I'm not,
Totally.
and so often it's helpful to talk to other friends who can kind of react to your pitch. So that's one thing. And then also, it's hard, Casey, because like, again, people want the good team, the good culture, nice people. But I actually wouldn't say that to a recruiter because nobody ever says, I want to work with jerks who, in a terrible culture. I think it's more about um, well, it's 2 things. Like, one is defining that as much as possible. So one framework I like to think of is it a more of a get it right environment or is it more of a get it done environment? No judgment on those, but there are different kinds of, environments to work in. So if you can kind of articulate the culture as much as you can, if that's gonna be a key criteria, great. But I would actually, also, just if you're talking to a recruiter, be clear on like, I would love to work at a company that, is in this space, maybe it's like marketing technology, maybe it's cybersecurity, maybe it's Series B, post product market fit. I get a lot of that. And in a particular location, I like to know if somebody's going to move or not, physically relocate. It's just having that sense. I also ask people what is the thing they do that's easier than breathing, as a way of just getting at like, what is there? It's not quite what is your superpower, but because I just like to see who's like where somebody really, really shines, and I'm not as interested usually in the whole resume walkthrough. I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this.
Right.
Um, yeah,
I
seriously.
love that. It whether the word is niche or is it niched for you or is it niche? What let's make the call right now. What
Oh, let's make
how,
that call. I
how
like
do
to
you
say
say it?
niche. I like to say niche.
I
Yeah.
say it too, but doesn't niche sometimes just sounds like a
Oh, it does. It sounds more, a little French. Yeah.
yeah, and this is like a personal niche, right? And what's to remind people, you are an executive recruiter, so you're helping place senior level marketers.
Mhm.
And but what's fascinating is this lesson, even if you're in marketing and you're seen, we all need this lesson, right? Not only do we
Oh,
all
yeah,
need
a
this,
lot of career advice, like, applies to everybody,
yes,
and
but
a lot of times
yeah,
executives, you would think they'd be more
you
clued
think.
in on it, but then, we all need a little refresher course.
We all do, and I mean, it took me having a just even a coaching session with some of myself to be able to say, "Hey, I love working with professional services, or I love the B2B software space," right? But I think the important thing is not to try to be everything, be the everything marketer to that recruiter, because then you get forgotten. That particular CMO who said, "I'm a CMO who thinks like a CFO," uh, that says something, right? Now, if you don't want that, that's great. You saved yourself the trouble of not talking to that person. He saved himself or she saved herself the trouble of not talking to you. But if that's what you're looking for, this is someone who's claiming it, right? So
Yeah.
I love that. Or hey, I prefer the early stage startup. And once we get a little bit bigger, I'm out. You find somebody else. Or you bring me in once you've figured out what your product market fit. I'll take it to the roof after that. But think about what that next step is and what you I love that you also said for culture, don't just say I want a good culture because it's like, well, what is it's so subjective. What does that mean to you? And getting very clear on I like to have it's almost like what are your personal core values and are they going to line up? Mine are like I care, I have fun, I get things done, right? So if there's a company that doesn't really care and they don't have fun, I'm not really interested, right? Because this is what I bring to it. So having that niche, having that one liner, man, what a great recommendation. And then having that, having some values that you stand for. This is great stuff. I can't believe we've got you here on this podcast to just answer questions like this. This is like $1 million advice for everyone listening. This is great stuff. So, can I take us back to that first myth around the scarcity versus abundance? what's going on here? We have employers that are still being draconian and asking that bizarre question of why do you want to work here? It's like, I don't know. You tell me. Why do I want to work here? What's going on? How have we not responded to this?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of people haven't really been taught how to interview, and there's all these different ways of interviewing.
Yeah.
And it's
Googled
very
some questions.
common. Yeah, right, and or, like, even people put out a job spec and it'll be like they Google the like, the job title and they kind of cobble it together from
Yeah, they copied
different.
someone else's job
Yeah,
description.
copied from
I've
somebody
done that.
else's, yeah, as opposed to think about, the pitch. So, always when I write a job spec, I write somewhat unique job specs, and they're really damn long. But I have quotes from the company, and I talk about kind of why somebody would want to work there. Again, what's the kind of value prop. But I think what we have all too common is that a CEO doesn't have a lot of time. God bless them, and so they are probably they are often reading somebody's resume like on the way to the interview, and then I think the other thing in recruiting is like you really want the person to be the one. Yeah, because you don't want to spend tons of time recruiting. And you really want to feel that familiarity with the person, like, oh, I get them and they get me. And I think truly a CEO, say meeting a CMO candidate, they really do want to know what makes the person tick. They want to understand they wanna scratch below the surface and not have the person be super polished. Usually, they want the real story, and of course, candidates want, the same thing. So it's almost like we have this historical mindset of you sit on one side of the table, I sit on the other side of the table, and we're kinda putting our best foot forward. But where I see searches going really well is when you kind of sitting on the same side of the table proverbially and maybe even literally where say a CEO can say, look, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And candidates can do the same. Like I had a candidate who I'll never forget this, is doing this um search for kind of typical search for me. It was a B2B SaaS company and they wanted a demand gen oriented marketing leader. And I had this guy who showed up in an interview with me. He said, "Erica, I'll share my screen. This is uh my what do you call my dashboard, my marketing dashboard. And here you see like, the lead flow and all the different channels and how well they're performing. Here's the CAC, here's the LTV, whatever, blah, blah, blah." And he kind of just narrated for me, this is what's working well, this is what's not. And I was just in awe, and I wished everybody could do that, so a little bit of show and tell is great, I think on both sides,
Yeah.
and kind of just and also I think, companies are scared. They wanna make sure that, um, they don't wanna make a mistake, so that's probably a little bit where it comes from. And now in a market where you have to kind of move fast to get the talent before they go somewhere else, you might be kind of taking, looking and leaping at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And there's some kind of weird game that tends to get played where I'm being not really myself, and neither are you. And we're both sitting in front of each other being not completely fake, that's too much, but we're being not quite ourselves. And what we're asking for is not quite what we want. And and then we find it out later, right? It's almost
Right.
like getting married too soon or something. Yeah, like whatever
Yeah.
you know, hey, have a couple dates but man, how do you balance that though? Because we just talked about how there's scarcity on the other side now. You want to get them in. So if you want to get them in, how badly do you scare them to tell them that you've got some, hey, we're a startup, things are going to change all the time. But at the same time, here's what's good. How do you balance the transparency without freaking out a candidate who might be getting sold by somebody else?
Damn, you have good questions. Yeah.
Right?
I think that a good marketer wants to solve a problem. And sometimes because I've asked, probably thousands of people this question of what is easier for you than breathing. And some of the smartest ones just say, I like solving tough problems and I'm good at it. And not everybody says that. Not everybody who's good says that. But and so I think, and not I think, what I have seen is that companies that kind of air their dirty laundry attract people that want to fix that problem.
Ooh,
Where a CEO can say, "Okay, here's the situation. Companies at, I don't know, 50 million in revenue, but marketing is more akin to a $25 million business, and I need to mature that. I'm having a problem because the leads that are coming in are more from more tactical decision makers, but what we want is more business decision makers. And how can I think through that? Here's my hypothesis for where growth can come from. What do you think?" And so those kinds of honest conversations about, about what's broken, what needs fixing are really compelling. The other thing that I have started doing with some of my clients is like a from to framework. So, I go in and I ask, what are the business challenges? What are the top 3 business results you're looking for? And a bunch of other questions. But then I'll come up with this from to framework where it's just like
yep.
5, yeah, kind of lines on a spreadsheet, so to speak. And on the left, it might be like, 30 million in revenue, and then there's an arrow to 50 million in revenue. So the company wants to go from 30 to 50. The company wants to go from tactical decision makers to more business, kind of more executive decision makers. They want to do, I don't know, going from a marketing team of 5 to a marketing team of, 10 that is more of a kind of modern marketing team, and that kind of from to, I often just share that with candidates in an interview and they can get excited about like, oh, I've done this before. I know how to do this.
Wow. Those 2 things, I've starred them, I've circled them. Air the dirty laundry, it's gonna attract candidates that wanna solve it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And if it freaks someone out, well, they probably aren't the one to solve it. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. Like,
I think you can also ask a candidate, what are the problems that you want to solve? Because
ooh,
most people want to do something. They want to have some kind of impact. And that impact might not be problem solving. Like if you're going from 0 to 10, and this is not actual numbers, but like conceptually 0 to 10, like you want somebody who that's hard, right? But the problem is painting on a white canvas. And very few people can do that. I mean, I have way more people who say like, "Oh, bring me the Series B, Series C company that has figured out product market fit. I'll help them scale." That part
right.
too, to their credit, but being able to kind of be there early stage and solve that challenge, is a particular breed of thing. And
Right.
I don't know, I don't tend to get the searches where it's all about sustaining. I guess those jobs are out there where it's like, hey, eke out 0.01% more market share or,
Right. Just
whatever.
gotta
But
hang out.
yeah, yeah, I just that's somebody probably wouldn't engage.
Well, I guess it doesn't really matter who you get at that point if you're just trying to hang out, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Just don't get an axe murderer. But for the
yeah,
stuff you're talking about, it does matter. If you're trying to triple, if you're trying to double, if you're trying to solve product market fit. See, when you describe that, I'm like, I'd prefer that personally. Give me the blank canvas. Let's talk to people and figure out where the fit is. But as soon as you find it and it's really starting to take off, it's like, oh, where's the excitement? Where's the
yeah,
chase?
yeah.
And it's time to get someone else in there with that dashboard. Holy crap. Maybe you can introduce me to the dashboard guy later offline because that sounds awesome. I'd love to meet him or her, whoever it is.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but I like that. Asking them though the problem they want to solve. Like
yeah,
maybe doing that before you talk about the problems you want to throw at them, and just having an open dialogue, saying what kind of problems really kind of light you up. I mean, I called the other day with someone just as chit chat with a marketer, and she was uh, all about that scrappy early days of the sources haven't been established. We don't know where the lead gen sources are. But we need to go find out. That appealed to her more than okay, we've already got some of these here, and we want to maximize them. You know,
yeah.
just a
And if you like that kind of, so that person you talked to is more
yeah,
like call her more 0 to 10.
0 to 10.
If
Yeah,
you like that and you have that experience, you are then very valuable to a company that wants to do that, because often the 0 to 10 person then wants to do 10 to 50, and then the company that is at 0 is looking for that, or like somebody who has scaled this mountain and wants to scale it again.
Yeah.
That's really useful. And sometimes candidates don't think of that. So sometimes I'm talking to people and I say, wow, like you've done this before and you like that stage, you like that messy stage, and you want to go do it again. Like that's part of your pitch. That's like maybe 80% of your pitch right there.
Right. Right. Which is huge. And I
Yeah.
think in the end, we're all just trying to find the place that will fulfill us the most. And companies are all trying to find people that can solve those problems and have fun doing it, you know,
Yeah.
in the end.
Exactly.
Um, so so any other tips on navigating the fact that this market is flipped? Anything for the companies to think about, anything else for the candidates to think about? Yes, you've got more opportunity as a candidate, but is there a downside to that? And then for a company, you do want to attract people in.
Yeah, I think I have some notes here because I was on a different, call, where I didn't actually get to share all of these. So,
Yeah, yeah,
here
yeah.
we go.
We're like,
Yeah.
rapid fire. I got a whole
One
lot.
is just like get your pitch, get your pitch and get it good. One thing
Yeah,
I do in my searches is I always practice my elevator pitch with the client ahead of getting on the phone with potentially 200
smart.
people. And so, but whether or not you have a search person, you could do that too. Be flexible location wise. I am, so I get like a lot of calls lately about doing searches and I have to turn them down. So I'm thinking of saying like, okay, I'm only going to work with the folks that are flexible location wise because
Mm,
that's what candidates mostly want. They want the remote job or they like I had a person who it's a Boston-based company and I talked to somebody who lived, call it an hour from Boston and she did not want to be in Boston 3 days a week, which is what the company wanted. So it's almost like, she could have been, the company could have been anywhere. So there's that aspect. I think also like finding a way for your candidates to get to know the culture remotely, if that's important to them. Ask them to join a team meeting or maybe even a customer meeting, even if it's via Zoom, because especially with the pandemic, we're not in touch. We're not, we don't have as in person, contact as much as we used to. So it is hard to
yeah.
get to know a culture. I think you can use personality assessments. My
Mm-mm.
favorite is the predictive index. It's great. It's
You
like
like the predictive
5 minute. I
predictive
do. I
index.
really do. Maybe because it's a local company. I like them and know them, but it's like a 5 minute easy test.
It was quick. It was almost too quick that I was like, wait a minute. My whole life and career is decided from this like 4 minute exercise that I clicked not enough words, you know?
But it's pretty was it accurate?
I think so. I had somebody like, explain it to me and he said lots of nice things about me. So
Okay.
I think so.
But they
I'll
sounded
have to
they resonated?
I'll have to share the results with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to find them. But okay, so you like the predictive index. That's cool.
I do, and I always say to clients, "Hey, clients should take it too and then share it with the candidates." Again,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like sitting on the same side of the table. I also think it's just this mindset of like, if you say that your job is to recruit the best people and your company is all about the best talent, then your calendar should reflect that. And
Can you say that again?
if you see your job at CEO or, whatever executive leader, muckety muck. And you say that your most important thing is to hire the best talent, have the most talented team, have a really employee centered, kind of culture, then your calendar should reflect that. And you should be um, meeting with candidates and and making sure that you dive deep into interviews and spending time with people. Like I'm not a fan of a 30-minute interview, frankly, because I think usually the best stuff comes out kind of at the end. And
Mm,
and then often CEOs, like the most successful CEOs that I've worked with, they're great salespeople and they perceive like I had this one client and he said to all the candidates, like, "I assume you could do the job because Erica wouldn't have put you in front of me if you couldn't do the job. So my job is just to sell you on this role." And a lot of people and so that's great. And I mean, the guy can sell snow to Eskimos, right? And a lot of
right.
people, they wait until the end, like, okay, the candidate has proven themselves and now we're gonna pull out the pitch, but it could be too late at that point.
Interesting. Yeah, I was chatting with a candidate once, who was applying at a different company, and they had thrown a lot of old school stuff at him. They'd thrown like a weirder personality test, like a long one, and it didn't quite doesn't share. Like I agree. If you're gonna ask someone to take one, I do Colby a lot, and I'll say you take it, send it to me, and I'll send you mine back. So I want you to
Yeah, and share theirs
yeah.
back with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely can see yours and then send me your results, like, you see them first, and then definitely I'll share mine with you, so it's more of a even if you don't even work here, it's like a cool exercise that'll benefit
Yeah.
you in the future, as opposed to that secret personality test that you don't know the results, but you don't get that next call and you don't even know what happened.
Yeah, you kind of wanna pay off somebody's time. I mean, that sounds
Yeah.
very transactional, but somebody's putting people are putting time in on both sides, and you always wanna kind of value that, and that's the most right? I mean, the most important resources that people have are their time and their relationships. And so
Yeah.
those are and those are very much at the foreground when you in a recruiting kind of situation. And so, um, treating both sides well is super important.
Yeah, it really is. It you just it's that mutual respect, and I think it shows people either realize they're getting it or they're not getting it. Um Yeah, makes sense. So, you mentioned the drive into Boston thing. And I guess when you mentioned flexible location, you meant that the companies you're working with, you want them to be flexible. Do and I guess the candidates don't have to be anymore because it's not a scarce job market, it's a abundant one.
Right.
You see a lot more of the remote happening?
No, funnily enough, I'm seeing a lot of companies where they're saying, "We really want the person to be here." And if they have a preference,
Yeah.
that's fine. I get that. And in a sense, it's easier, right? It's like I just started a search in Atlanta. And okay, I'm not actually an expert on Atlanta, but I can navigate it. But they're open to people wherever they were like, Eastern or Central time zone. So that's what I'm starting to see. Like time zone is really important for
Mhm.
companies that are flexible location wise. But I am seeing more CEOs saying, hey, fewer CEOs than I would think saying, I really want somebody to be here because, and it's an honest, desire. It's like they're at the stage where people working side by side is really going to like make a difference to the business. That kind of bump effect of, people,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, connecting to each other. But again, the talent side isn't quite there yet. So I think we're really on this precipice and things are really kind of changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have done that driving to Boston thing in my younger days, and yeah, I spent an hour and a half each way, and it was like train, plane, automobile. So I would drive to the commuter rail half an hour, then I'd ride that rail in all the way to the end, from end to end, and then that was the Lowell line, and then you get to
Oh,
North Station, and then I would have to walk maybe 15 minutes across the river over to Cambridge. That
oh,
was cool when you
every
like
day you did that every day.
every day, and they get home, the same thing, right? Catch a train back, don't miss the train, you're waiting for another hour,
Yeah.
2
Right.
or something, and, it was cool being in the city at a
Yeah.
certain time, but then as you get older, things change, especially for executives now, though. I mean, I even had a convo with my wife where she was saying, I'm not driving over an hour anymore," and I'm like,
No,
"I'm just
you
not
never get the
not
time
gonna do
back.
it." Yeah,
I mean,
you don't. I mean, you
yeah.
get to listen to the hardcore marketing show, but there's only so many episodes? So it's not like, Casey, I need you to record every day so that I have something for my drive every day. Maybe I'll just go remote instead. So tell me, the other myth we didn't quite, we're getting into it with your list though, which I really appreciate the rapid fire concepts. And we're talking remote now is just that third part, or the second one where we're talking about what candidates actually want these days, and how there's a bit of a mismatch with employers thinking they want one thing and maybe even they're trying to sell them on that, but really they want something different. Now we talked about to candidates about kind of getting clear on what you as much as you can about what you actually want from a culture. But what kind of mismatches are you seeing with employers and candidates on what they actually want from a job?
Hmm. I I mean, again, it's like what candidates want. Yeah, well, here's another thing that gets beyond like team and culture and stuff. Um, What I'm starting to see is, and this is a good thing, there being more alignment on, when a company says like, okay, we're at 30 million, we want to get to 50 million. The best candidates will say, hey, let's have a discussion on exactly how, not just bring in more lead, but exactly where's the growth going to come from? Okay, we're going to focus on XYZ industry and we are going to focus on, increasing the, average deal size.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. Or is it that the growth is going to come from, yeah, I don't know, acquiring a company or something? So, it's often that a company will put on the marketing leader, like, "Oh, we need to grow," and, and the problem might not be the problem could be in product as opposed to in marketing. The problem could be, yeah, a customer success problem with, a kind of a leaky bucket, like you
Yeah.
lose customers as soon as you get them. And so what I'm seeing is, um during the interview process, candidates getting real about like, okay, let's break down where that growth is going to come from. The other thing that I'm starting to see is the best candidates talking about budget and saying, okay, you want to do this. This is the budget that I will need to do that. How does that feel to you? And, okay, if what you don't want is a marketing budget that's gonna be spread like peanut butter across a ton of different priorities. It's more like, matching it to the kind of growth aspirations of the company and saying, Okay, this is the budget for now. If we're gonna go to, we're gonna go global and, serve other countries next year, then this is the additional budget that I will need to do that. And having that alignment is really key. I have this framework that I came up with actually my friends at the Predictive Index, and it's all about, why like marketing leaders can fail, but it's not for they don't fail for lack of uh expertise. They don't fail for lack of, interest. They fail for lack of alignment between what the CEO's expectations are, what the marketing leader's responsibilities are. And there's three things: their authority, their budget, and their incentives. So those three things. So all of this stuff has to be in alignment. And often when a marketing leader fails, it's because those things haven't been, defined. It's because there's been hand waving. So I'm glad to see this in the interview process. And again, as it kind of goes back to like sitting on the same side of the table and getting real about what the role is and where that growth is going to come from.
So cool. The idea of getting that one step deeper, especially for a marketing leader, the executives you're talking to understand from the companies they're working with. Yeah, do you align with the CEO? Do you come to the idea of growth in the same way? Are you gonna get in there and they're like completely not hip on digital and they want just radio advertisements, right? And so when you
Or they
pitch
want
them
digital, but they don't understand, or but they don't want to give up the radio stuff,
right, oh, yeah, yeah,
right? It's like I think the biggest challenge, I've talked about this before in other kind of settings, is this kind of peacemaker change maker paradox that marketers can fall into. So, marketing leader is often hired to be a change maker, right? Like, and that's fine. That's fair, right? We all, kind of want somebody who's going to make change. But often that marketing leader is asked to like, oh, but do it in a diplomatic way. Make sure you don't ruffle any feathers. And so it's like, and so this is often where people can get stuck. It's like, okay, well, you hired me to make change, but then you're telling me you want me to make peace all the time, which is it? And so getting clarity on, and obviously it's a balance. But
amen, though. I'm terrible at the peacemakers. Oh, I feel like I am. Inside my soul has trouble with the peacemaker side. But if you're like, "Hey, go ahead, break this thing,"
is
eh,
that because you're military?
maybe. I don't know. But maybe it all sort of connects that it's like, "Yeah, let's get in here and let's fix this thing, and and we'll try to rescue the survivors. We won't leave anyone behind, but man, we're gonna blow up whatever you have, and make sure it works." Uh,
And that, Casey, that's great. Like because we were talking before about culture,
yeah,
and people say, I want a good culture. Well, there's a difference between a culture that, where it's like taking care of the survivors almost so much that, you don't make as much you don't
100%.
advance as much.
Yeah.
And then there's the cultures that are like, okay, well, we're going in a new direction. People might not want to come with us, and that's okay if they want to go find other jobs. Those are very different. So again, it's that peacemaker, change maker paradox, and where on that kind of spectrum the
Yeah.
company is. That is a valid conversation to have with a company. I mean, you just hope that you like can believe the answers that you're
I
yeah.
know, right? You just everyone has to be transparent and clear about how that is. I think as a junior marketer, I experienced when all that wasn't aligned. When you came into a place that had always typically expected marketing to be, peacefully subservient to sales and just sending out things in email and then getting laid off the first time there was any bump because they're not actually doing anything. And somebody comes in, they're like, let's define this, let's blow this up, let's change this. And they're like, what's going on?
Right.
Where is our peaceful marketer?
Right.
Who is
Right.
this crazy
Exactly.
person? But then
Yeah.
it's bad for the other person too because they're dragging people behind. And I think the worst times I've ever experienced always felt like punching jello. Like you want to get forward, but then
Punch
the
Jello. I
the
love it.
jello's like,
Yeah.
or like you
Yeah.
punch it or you're trying to move forward and it just wiggles and then nothing
Yeah,
happens.
you get ooze, but you don't get
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like but this is the thing with marketers, it's like there's, vibrational energy and then there's translational energy, and I think a lot of marketing teams are they struggle because they're in this vibrational, like, moving around, but not necessarily moving from point A to point B,
Oh, I get
it's
it.
like
Yep.
a vending machine marketing, like, it's like, "Okay, I'll have one, piece of collateral, please, and I'll have one campaign on Facebook."
Yeah.
And they get stuck in kind of doing and reacting as opposed to really pushing things forward. Obviously, the best marketers are surmounting that challenge.
Yeah. I once had a CEO ask me how many emails we sent that month. And yeah, I was a wee little marketing manager lad. And so I don't know why he's asking me, but I actually knew the answer. It was about 1 million. And his response back was, well, next month, let's send 1.5 million. You know,
Oh.
like,
Well, how did you react? Okay, because this happened, a CEO, you can't really expect them to be a marketing expert. That it's, I'm
yeah.
the thing about being a CEO is you're not it's a scary job, right? Because you're not
Oh,
expert in
100%.
any of the functions that report to you. So
100%.
how would you now?
Yeah, yeah. So how I react
Now that you're,
I'm a marketing
like
manager. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
And I didn't even know any better at the time. Right. So and that's why I was sort of struggling in the marketing world of saying, like, am I helping the company? Like, what am I doing? We're just sending emails out. Like, and it took having ROI tracking later on with marketing automation for me to go, oh my gosh, I am actually doing something at work other than
mhm,
just sending out emails. We're helping sales sell 500,000 $4 million worth of deals by doing these activities, certain ones. So now I know. So how would I answer that now? No one's ever
yeah.
asked me that. It's really interesting. I'd be like, Bob, whatever his name is, pull up a chair. Let's have a chat. But I don't know if you can actually convince people. Now that I've said that, if I mean, that's what time to find out is on the interview, right? Like, do they understand that it's not about quantity, it's about figuring out what works and what doesn't work and do more of what does work. Because I've had conversations with some executives who are like, I just want volume. Just give me volume because every time we've had volume, I've seen numbers go up. And every time we haven't had volume, they've gone down. And to be able to constantly try to say, well, okay, but we're tracking these spam emails. And yeah, I literally have come into places where they're sending spam out and they didn't track any of it. So I put a little tracking code in there and now our system's telling us that we're getting nothing from it. Like nothing is happening. But no, keep those emails going because I don't know. And so like that, like, I don't know how much you can twist and arm, maneuver and that kind of thing. It just sometimes you need that buy-in. I think even like Dave Gerhardt said something about that. Like you just need to have that relationship and that buy. You need to be on the same page with your CEO before you get started. Like
Mhm,
how much
mhm,
can you
mhm.
convince them? And then you're just spending half your day just convincing them
Right.
of methodology.
Right, but that is I mean, what you're grappling with right now, like, in what you just said, like, that is so the meat of a CMO role, and that's the difference between the CMO that gets the job and the CMO that doesn't. It's like, the CMO that gets the job is the one that the CEO can trust to kind of say, like, I don't understand this. Help me think about it in a different way." That also feels comfortable to me. Again, here's that peacemaker thing like I don't want to be too scared. So it's like, help me get from point A to point E, but don't go straight there. And
Yeah.
that's why those conversations of like the pull up the chair and what you would say next, I think this is where marketers need to spend their time. Like, how do they prepare for those conversations? Like,
Yeah.
you actually, like, I mean, I just asked you off the cuff, and
Yeah.
obviously, I'm sure you would prepare, being the good, military boy that you are. Uh, but uh, but I don't know. It's something I think about a lot because I'm working with CEOs, and sometimes I work with CMOs as clients, and it's so much different. It's like, you're just talking shorthand the whole time.
Right.
But with CEOs, it's different, and sometimes there is that educating, and it might seem pretty basic to a marketer, but that is the core of the job in getting a CEO to understand, kind of the impact that a marketing person can have and why it shouldn't be and how do you get from this vibrational function to this translational kind of function?
Nice. Yeah, I've always that vibration translation for me, it's been, the activity mindset versus the ROI mindset.
Yeah, thank you. That's
You know
better. Yeah.
no, I like yours too, though. I love the idea of the because you're right, it is that jello vibration of just like, we're just, "Oh, we're being busy, boss. We're so busy today." And then,
Right.
okay. But busy is a really weak defense when things get tough, But if you're the investment side and you turn 5K, this is what happened with me in marketing automation. You know, the same guy at a different company, and I show the CEO who was equally skeptical of marketing, "Hey, we spent that 5K on this thing, and sales just recently closed, $500,000 of deals over here. And here it is. Here's the report. It's in the interface." And then they're like, "Cool." Instead of asking to chop that five in half, they're saying, "What could you do with 10? Can I give
Right.
you more? Can you go to 15?" And now you have a better problem, which is, does this scale? How much
Right.
volume do I have in this source? But it's a much more fun conversation to have. It's like, "Ooh,
Right.
how far can I take this?" Versus, how can I make do with less and still hit the bigger numbers? So that was a life changer for me, just shifting that conversation over. And then it's like, well, if you want to get to this number, we have to invest it over here, which is,
Mhm.
I'm sure what a lot of the dashboards you've seen, okay, it's just math. Based on the math we have now, we can try to improve each and every step. But based on what we have here, if you want this outcome, and sales is doing this, then we just need to change these inputs on this other side.
Yeah, there could be diminishing returns, and I mean, this is
Yeah,
the challenge with, the focus on
absolutely.
performance marketing and kind of demand gen oriented people above all other skill sets where they can think in a more incremental way.
Yeah.
Um, and that can be great at a certain point, but you also get to a point where you don't wanna be spending so much to acquire customers,
Yeah.
especially now with all the data privacy, personalization, stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's getting more and more expensive to just kind of buy your way into a market, and so this kind of I'm doing this B2C search right now, and talking to a bunch of people from like called the D2C kind of companies, about how, this model of, DC saying, just here's a ton of money, go, do your performance marketing stuff and acquire customers. There are diminishing returns there. And that's why
Mhm.
you kind of need to couple it with brand. And that's, the best D2C brands have done, the Warby Parkers of the world have done that.
Yeah, for sure. Any Before we move on, it's interesting. Any differences on the placement, the hiring that you're seeing between the B2C and the B2B and the B2C?
Not really. I mean,
Kind of the
kind of,
same?
instead of talking about, retention, you talk about loyalty. Instead of talking about demand gen, you talk about customer acquisition. I don't know. Like, but you're talking to somebody who really has long believed that there can and should be more uh, cross pollination between
Mhm.
B2B and B2C
Mhm.
marketing. Um, Especially now, again, with all the kind of diminishing returns of performance marketing. What you see is on the B2C side, more of a focus on content marketing,
Mm.
call it inbound, in their own way. Um, and and so I think, B2B folks could definitely make that leap,
Right.
and B2B folks tend to be a little bit more, used to smaller budgets for better or for worse. So I think, again, that's kind of a trend, but I've thought about that trend, or, been prognosticating that trend for a long time. And I think it really gets down to companies want to hire somebody that, from a brand that's kind of aspirational for them.
Mhm.
And clients don't like to squint, it's like, okay, so I am whatever, I'm Pepsi and you're bringing me a candidate from Marketo. And you or I could potentially make a case for that making a ton of sense, right? Wasn't it McDonald's that bought that? It was like a MarTech company that they bought, like some, um, yeah, this is like, several months ago or maybe a couple years ago, I forget. Um, but again, it's like more likely that the Pepsi person is going to be like, who's from Diageo, who's from Cadbury Schweppes, who's from Coca-Cola, just to give an example. It's the same on the B2B side, your
Yeah.
MarTech company, like I've had to uh tell CEOs, okay, you're a MarTech company. Actually look at this person from the cybersecurity space because they're both knife fights, right? MarTech, cybersecurity, they're both, tech stacks where, somebody can kind of build their tech stack with whatever selection of technology they need. They're kind of
Yeah.
anchor tenants and then there are, other technologies to fill in the blank. You know, so there's actually more similarities than differences, but some are
Yeah.
more willing to see that than others.
I think part of that, we can do a whole other show on this one, but just the idea, I think my soapbox is we have stopped talking to our customers. And so because of that, the industry experience matters more because hopefully you already know them. But if you have some sort of process where you just talk to them and you learn what the deal is and you learn their likes and their weaknesses and their challenges and their struggles and the triggers that make them buy, then you could technically market anything. If you build in time, in your onboarding to be able to talk to everyone you need to talk to. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we hide behind our tools and whatnot, and then we infer what we think they know. Uh,
Right.
I recently had this opportunity to work with an IT company, and a lot of the experiences I had seen with a marketing SaaS worked for IT SaaS.
Mhm,
And mostly it wasn't about the buyer is completely different, right? Different department, they act different ways, still human, but
mhm,
barely they're different. They're very different. But the difference was the similarity was both of those software tools are were like game changers in that it was not just a nice to have, but if you fully use this tool, it would change the way you would operate for the rest of your
mhm,
career. And and that required change management and that required buy-in and all the harder things beyond getting to know the buyer. So it's like get
yeah,
to know the buyer, have conversations with them, and then the similarities that I think really matters is, hey, they helped, these people lead organizational change at this other company. They could do it here too, you know?
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's a great example, and
Yeah.
that's often what happens in a search. It's like, I'm pitching people and kind of trying to tell the story of how their experience is relevant, and, um, then there's kind of an art to that.
Oh, 100%. That's why they pay you the big bucks. That's why you're that important. Quick question. Any favorite book you're either reading now or you like to recommend to people?
One book that I love, I mean, it's been a long time since I read it, but, I read it at the beginning of my recruiting career. It's called The Rare Find. It's by George Anders, it might be out of print now, but I think it's still great. And this guy looked at kind of extreme areas of talent. Like, so he looked at what is it, like Navy SEALs, and he followed around the Navy SEALs and to see how they would kind of recruit, or like assess people for being good for the Navy SEALs. He looked at basketball teams, like pro basketball teams, and how scouts would pick people to be on the
Interesting.
teams. And what he found was that it wasn't the person who, in the case of like basketball, it wasn't the person that jumped the highest or, got the most baskets. It was the person who ran to the huddle instead of walk to the huddle. It was
Huh.
the person who showed up earlier for practice and stayed late. It was the person who, like, put their arm around a fellow teammate, and that, when things were going tough, and that's how scouts, like, the best scouts would kind of work to find the best people for basketball teams, and he looked at, like, venture capital and everything else. I found it really fascinating because, I guess because my job is all about, finding that rare find. So that's one I like. Another one I like is, Adam Grant. given what's it called? Give and take, giving and taking. And it's all about how, we're either givers or takers or matchers, and also very relevant to what I do.
Interesting. That's great. I love finding out about cool books. Cool. I definitely check those out.
How much do you read?
I listen a lot. I listen a lot.
Oh, okay, like Audible.
Yeah, Audible.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if something has an Audible, it's like almost always gonna get added to my list. But if it doesn't have one, it's like a special thing. If it though I think I need to add in more of that like nighttime reading, get off the electronics kind of thing, so your eyes are looking at paper instead of,
Mhm.
a screen. I gotta start doing that. So I mean the books are around me. They're going,
Yeah.
Casey, read me. So I just need to, take them up on that offer.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
much
hey, I
time,
love
so little time. Yeah,
oh
go ahead.
no, seriously. I love the kind of transition. You've taught us so much. I'm just curious where all this information comes from, how you gained all this thing. So, really, who are you? Take me back in time,
Mm.
like little Erica days. Did you always know you're going to be doing what you're doing now? Did you have any glimpses of it? What was it like growing up?
Oh, hell no. No, it's so funny because my mom would say, "Erica, I cannot believe you do what you do." Like, because when you were little, the phone would ring and you would, like, run away and, like, hide behind me. Like, I had a speech problem growing up, you'll hear it a little bit here and now, here and again. And, so I just wasn't comfortable talking, and I think
Mm,
now it might be why I actually spend a lot of my time listening, whether it's clients talking or candidates talking, because 'cause I'd rather, not spiel for too long. Um, this podcast notwithstanding, I guess. Um, so yeah, no, and very few recruiters. I've only met one recruiter who like wanted to do this from when he was little. It's the kind of thing that you kind of collect really dispersed and disparate, aspects
yeah.
of your, kind of in your career toolbox. And then you realize like, oh, okay, I can put this all together. Like I like this weird combination of selling and relationship management and getting to be an expert in one particular area and, finding people, it's kind of like being a personal shopper and everything. So not what I expected, but yeah, I wish I was a person who knew what I wanted to do at an early age because I would have been much more successful. But I changed my mind a gazillion times. I knew I wanted tech. I knew I was just kind of like, my family growing up, they were like the last people to, get the VCR or get the, whatever, like get the whatever the tech was of the day. And I wanted to make technology easier for people to use. And um, so for the first part of my career, it was a lot about I did UI design, UX stuff, and so it was like connecting people to technology, and then I had this pivot, which was kind of really key, and that was like connecting people to people,
Mm.
and that was really I mean, I like both, but, but that's kind of obviously where recruiting lies.
Yeah, and but I love that background of from listening. Just a little bit of hesitation on wanting to speak, but causes you to listen more, and then you just get really good at it, and I have to imagine that you just sort of picked up all these it's like a muscle, right? The listening skill, and now you have a podcast, which is just perfect because, people think you get to do a podcast to talk a lot, but actually you do a podcast to mostly listen and learn, and if that's your jam, then it's just the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah, but I think listening, it's a skill that you really have to continually hone.
Okay, yeah.
Um, Uh, I don't know. I don't know if I'd actually yeah, I'd say that. And it's like, yeah, I'd rather be thinking about what somebody else is saying, and then because sometimes I kind of, steal the way they, their turn of phrase, and I say, "Wow, I really like that. I'm going to use that."
Oh, yeah,
But
totally.
I think part of it is over time in your career. There's a couple different dimensions. It's like one is that ego. You realize that ego serves you less and less, and so hopefully as you get more further as you get further into your career, your ego kind of drops away more and more, and that can enable you to be more present with other people and not be worried about being the smartest person in the room. I think early on in my career, I felt like, oh, I had to be smart, and yeah, and it's not really the case. It's like it can like, the way to be smart now is to have a conversation like we were talking about before about, telling a CEO why sending 1.5 million emails is not advisable. that's not like being all cerebral and everything. It's just really thinking about how somebody else is is approaching a problem and
Right.
helping them get from where they are to kind of where you want them to be.
Yeah, it's like internal marketing. It really is a thing.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
you market yourself to the organization just as much as to the customer,
Yeah.
to sales, and to everyone, to your stakeholders. I think that language helped me a while back too. Just understand, oh, what you do is marketing, and don't forget to do that internally as
Yeah.
well as externally. You need to do
Right.
that across the board,
Right.
especially
Yeah, it's
because
like the marketing of marketing. We wrote this piece. I
yes,
was at Forrester previously running this business. It was very cool. It was like this kind of peer-to-peer networking service for CMOs around the world. And we did this bespoke research. I didn't write it, somebody else did, but um one of the first pieces, which is very popular, was called the marketing of marketing. And the idea that like you have to market the function internally so that
yeah,
people understand what you're doing, what you're spending money on, what you're not spending money on, how long it takes to run a campaign, for God's sakes, because people think like, oh, I could just, you know, go poke a marketer in the tummy and, like a campaign's gonna come out.
woohoo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, what's that
Yeah,
little the Pillsbury, yeah, it's like the Pillsbury Doughboy, you know?
thank you. You, you picked up on that one. That's good. So, and eventually, you went to Wharton. By the way, did you ever do any classes with Peter Fader?
Um,
Is he around?
yeah, he scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, so he was on here. I
Oh,
like
yeah, 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 oh, geez,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and we just chatted, and he just burned my brain for an hour and a half. It was great. It was great. He's a really smart guy, but that
Oh,
it
yeah.
was one of those episodes where you had to be okay. To your point just now, with ego, you have to be okay being not the smartest person in the room so you can learn. And so I'm on this podcast. I'm sure people are, we're listening. I knew people were listening to it, but I had to be okay asking dumb questions or whatever questions to just stay on the path with him where he was taking it. But it was really interesting. The idea of, lifetime value, helping you
Yeah,
decide what you need to do with your marketing makes total
yeah.
sense. But it's the how that got really interesting, and the fog and the smoke coming out my ears on the show is just awesome. But he's a fantastic guy.
He's a force. Yeah, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, Wharton has a very, quantitative-oriented marketing function. Like, when
Interesting.
I was in business school, the first I'll just never forget this, but we had this, it's like you form these teams and you have to do all this work together, and one of the classes was marketing, and it was one of the hardest things to, and everybody's like, "Oh, marketing, it's this is a finance school, and so let's really focus on the finance aspects." And it was marketing that just, like, killed us all, in the first, semester of business school.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. Well, hey, I have a hypothetical question to throw at you.
Yeah.
Because I may or may not have a time machine up here in New Hampshire. And, let's say you come visit, we get some beers, and you get the chance to use the time machine.
Mhm.
And it's a certain kind that goes back in time to younger you days. And you get to see yourself after that undergrad degree. You just graduated at
Yeah.
international relations.
Mhm.
You're going out in the world now. You get to meet that version of you. What do you tell her? What kind of advice do you give her?
I think it gets back to that abundance scarcity mindset, so we are talking about that before in recruiting, and I think earlier in my career, I had more of a scarcity mindset when it came to jobs, and so I was always like, "Oh my god, I got a job," and I wasn't I've been in a lot of jobs that weren't quite the right fit, and but at the time, I was like, "Oh, I have to do this. I have to put in at least a year." And I mean, I've had a bunch of jobs where I was like crossing days off a calendar, literally, like,
Yeah.
I gotta just get to a year and then I can leave. And
Yeah.
and um and I think having more, if I could go back, I would tell myself like to have more of an abundance mindset. Like there's other stuff out there. And in fact, like you're hurting yourself, you're hurting the company that you're at, you're hurting like those around you, your loved ones, if you're in a job that makes you miserable, because like I'm pretty career oriented,
Yeah.
and I just yeah, I've had, it's so funny because I've had a lot of I feel it's just been like I probably had a lot more. I don't want to say career trauma, but like, that's too
No, me too.
strong. But I've just, yeah. And I've been in some situations where I'm like, oh, this is like so not me. But I think the other thing is that like as you go through your career, there should be a gradual alignment between who you are and what you do. And that's wonderful once you get there. Of course, those things are kind of always changing, right? You don't want to also want to get sedimented. You also kind of want to have a mindset of like growth and change and kind of evolving. But those are some of the things I would have told myself, and maybe military service, like we were talking about before. Would have been, I don't know, like, because there's only one time in your life when you can kind of do it, right?
It yeah, and that is the thing. Like some things you can do at any point, and some things, you're like, 80 applying to the Marine Corps. Get me back in, folks. Get
Yeah,
me
yeah,
back
yeah.
in. Give me a rifle. Let me get back out there. But they're like, I appreciate you applying, but not the
Right.
time. But you're right though. The abundance of there's plenty of positions out there. I think I stayed in ones like that too. Now I will say I wouldn't trade any of those. I worked at some pretty terrible places or great place with a not so great boss. But like those experiences of what not to do really helped me, I think, be better at eventually creating a company or eventually being a manager because I've experienced what didn't work well for me and feeling unimportant or or just not respected or those kind of things. It's like, okay, let's make sure we do that moving forward. So
So
I think
true.
those are valuable lessons.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, absolutely. If people want to connect with you, and there's a thousand reasons why, where should they go? What kind of social platforms? What kind of websites? Where should they reach out?
Uh, LinkedIn is probably where I'm most active, and I also have obviously a website with a blog. I don't know, blogs are kind of like old school, but anyway. But I have this newsletter, and it's all about my tagline is I place the make money marketing leaders and not the make it pretty ones. And so it's
Yeah.
this occasional newsletter, which also goes out to my blog. And of course, as you mentioned, I have a podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms called The Get. And I am working on the next season now, actually. And it's all about solving for the scale journey.
Yeah,
And
talk more about
yeah,
that.
I'm
So the
excited about
get
that.
what's on there? Do you interview people or are you giving out tips like this or
Yeah, I mean, I interview folks that are marketing leaders. I focus it on B2B SaaS and most of the seasons I'm on season 4, so the last couple seasons I've had uh like a theme. Like so the previous one was diversity, equity, inclusion. This year this one is about the solving for the scale journey. And it's really but the get is really all about the intersection between B2B SaaS, marketing leadership, and recruiting slash hiring slash organization stuff. And it's really fun.
yeah, no, I've had such a great time chatting with you. I can imagine, everyone else listening to this going, I want to get more of this. Well, there's only so many episodes of the Hardcore Marketing Show, but you can get a whole season of the Get or past season. Which one are you on now? Is this season 4? Or what
This is
season?
season 4 that I'm working on right now. And,
Wow.
mine is a little different. So um, it's like a Netflix show where, you
It's
have
serial though.
things
It's kind
start
of
to
like
drop.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool though. Very cool. Awesome. I'm definitely going to tune into that. We're going to link to that in the show notes so people can bounce on over to that. Um, are there any positions you're trying to fill for our marketing leaders out there listening?
Um, Yeah, but, let me see. I'll say I'm in pretty good shape on my searches right now. So, like, I'll
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that. I do when I do have a search that I can share, I often post it to my newsletter and on my site. Uh, but I'm feeling pretty confident about
Hey,
my
that's
searches right
that.
now.
I'm so
That's
happy to
a good
hear
thing.
that. That's really
Kidding.
good. Yeah. So if people want to get on that newsletter to be in that loop, it's theconnectivegood.com, right?
Exactly.
Sign up for that and connect with you on LinkedIn. This is amazing. Erica, you are so badass. I'm so glad we got introduced to each other. We've had a chance to sit down and I hope I've lived up because there are no casual conversations with recruiters, but I feel like maybe this was one, but I had such a good time with you today.
No, no, yeah, it was the right amount of casual versus, structured, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So thank you very much for your time, Casey. This is fun.
Yeah, this is so fun. We'll have to have you come back, and if you're ever looking for someone that we get them on the show. There's a tradition that once people are on the show, if they're a marketing leader and they're looking, they find their position afterwards. So let me know. How do I can
Okay,
help?
great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So for those listening, if you've learned something, and I know you have, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front and back over here. I have like a tome of knowledge, so many great takeaways from multiple myths and the idea of the scarcity, the abundance, but also getting that personal niche/niche right. There's so many things, but if you learn something, share this episode with someone else. That's how you show thought leadership, whether you're a marketing coordinator all the way up to you're a CMO, whatever the case may be. When you share knowledge, that's thought leadership, and that's how we make the world better. So with that, Erica, thank you again. This is amazing.
Thank you, Casey.
All right, everyone. This has been another absolutely fantastic episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.